Hello class! Welcome to today's flipped classroom. Today we're actually combining two lessons into one. So we're going to start with 1.7 and then go on to 1.8 and just briefly go over both of them. You can do both sets of notes on the same page, that's perfectly fine. And if you want, you can leave space at the top where the vocabulary is for the vocabulary for 1.8, your choice. Okay, today we're starting with two of our number properties, the commutative and associative properties. And our standard today is AF 1.3. So, commutative property. For addition, you can add numbers in a sum in any order. For example, 3 plus -8 or -8 plus 3. It's still not going to change your answer regardless of the order the numbers are written. The same is also true with multiplication. You can multiply factors in a product in any order. For example, 5 times -6 or -6 times 5. You can change the order that you pass through points on your commute to school and home without changing your route. So this is a little trick for remembering them. If you were to walk to school and you passed a big tree and then you passed the AT&T store and then you got to school, when you turn around to go home, you'll pass the AT&T store first, then you'll pass the big tree, and then you'll get home. You're still taking the same route, just in a different order. So that's a little trick. Your commute to school is your commutative property. So make sure you write down that property and pause the video if you need to. Associative property. The associative property of addition says that changing the grouping of numbers will not change their sum. For example, 2 plus 3 in parentheses plus 4 is the same thing as 2 plus parentheses 3 plus 4. Now, notice this is all addition. This only works if all the operations are addition. Otherwise, it will not work. And another thing to keep in mind, notice for the associative property, we're not moving the numbers at all, only the grouping symbols. And for multiplication, changing the grouping of factors will not change their product. So again, parentheses 7 times 4, close parenthesis, times 5 is the same thing as 7 times parenthesis 4 times 5. Notice again, the factors did not move, only the grouping symbols. And a trick for remembering associative property is the kids who you associate with at school are your groupies. You can change your group by hanging out with different kids at school without changing the number of kids at the school. Okay, so that's a little trick for remembering it. You're not changing the number of students that attend the school, you're just changing your groupies. Okay, let's go ahead and practice some of these. Teacher example 1, solve using the commutative property. Now, if it tells me to solve using the commutative property, that means I must use the commutative property, meaning I must change the order. So what I want to look at is I've got addition and I've got subtraction. So the first thing I need to do is make sure I have all addition so that I can use this property, because remember, this only works with addition and multiplication, not subtraction or division. Now, I want to change the order so I can deal with my negatives first. So I move the -17 and the 38. So now I can add these two together, excuse me, and work with my negatives first, then deal with that positive 38. Okay? And finally, I'm adding these two together, which, as we know, we are secretly subtracting. And I have my final answer. Okay, so that was solving using a commutative property. So again, if it ever tells you to do that, you must change that order. Okay, now to solve using the associative property, again, I cannot change the order. I can only change my grouping symbols. So I've moved the grouping symbols, and notice I changed from parentheses to brackets, and that's only because I already have parentheses around the -8 to keep that negative separate from being confused with a subtraction sign. So I use brackets, but they're the same thing as parentheses. Now again, I can combine my negatives, and then I can add, and by adding, I need to secretly subtract. Okay, and again, our answer is going to be 30 since, or the answer is going to be positive since 30 has the greater absolute value. Solve using both properties means I need to change the order and I need to move my grouping symbols. So let's take a look. First, I've changed the order of the 5 and the 9 using the commutative property. Then, I've moved my parentheses because I've decided that multiplying 5 times 6 is easier because it's a nice, easy number, and I like numbers that have zeros on them. They're easier to multiply. Okay, so now I have 30. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I have 30 times 9, and I think it's going to be a little cut off, so you can't quite see it there on the bottom. It is 270. So if you can't see that, that final answer is 270. Okay, so let's have you try it on your own. And I'm going to skip these for the sake of time, and we'll go straight to these ones here. Okay, so go ahead and do these 6 problems. When you're ready to see the answers, turn your screen back on. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look here. I notice I've got positives and negatives mixed up. So I want to change the order. So that means I use the commutative property so that my positives are together and my negative is separate. Then I can add and secretly subtract. Okay, in this problem here, I notice I've got subtraction. So first things first, I need to take care of that subtraction. Now that I have addition, I notice I've got negatives here, a positive here. So really, I don't have to change anything. But I decided to do both the commutative property by switching the 37 and the 82 and the associative property by moving the grouping symbols. So notice I've used both properties. And the reason for that is I can cancel these 2 out and get 0. And then when I know that when I'm adding a number with 0, I'm using the identity property and keeping its identity, and that would then just be negative 82. Okay. Problem number 6. Again, I have some options. I could just multiply these 2 together, but notice it says I have to use a property. So I'm going to go ahead and move my grouping symbols so that I can do negative 5 times 9 first, because I like that 0 on the end of 40. I think it's easy to multiply with. So now I have negative 45 times 40. I multiply them together and get negative 800. Okay, problem number 7. Again, some of you may want to just multiply 5 times 3 first, but it tells me I have to use a property. So I'm going to move my grouping symbols again and multiply negative 12 times 5 and have 60, and 60 times 3. Oh, looks like I'm missing that one there. 60 times 3 is going to be negative 180. Okay, so that's going to be that final answer there. Okay, taking a look here, right away I see I have subtraction, so I need to take care of that subtraction. Turn it into addition with skip, change, change. Now I have a nice addition problem, and I notice I've got the positive 29 and the negative 29. So I'm going to use the commutative property and change that order. Notice I left the grouping symbols alone, and it looks like I'm going to need to go ahead and add a couple steps on here. Okay, so you can see our final step here. I added that on, and we have the 29 and the negative 29 cancel out and become 0, and we end up with 34. And I went ahead and added negative 180 on here as well so you can see it. Here again, I do need to do something, either move the parentheses or move the numbers. In this case, I chose to move the numbers using the commutative property because 2 times 15 again ends in that nice easy 0. And then I just have 9 times 30. All I have to do is 9 times 3 and add a 0 on. Nice and easy. Nice positive number. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at notes 1.8, and we'll go through those. Okay. Now for notes 1.8, a couple things on here, a couple vocab words, one vocab word would be equivalent expressions, numerical or algebraic expressions that are equal. Okay, so remember expressions do not have an equal sign on it, and so it would just be some numbers. For example, 5 plus 8 is equal to 8 plus 5. Those would be equivalent expressions. The distributive property, make sure you always write down the properties. This is our third property for today. You multiply a sum by multiplying each addend separately and then add the products. The same can be done with subtraction. So for example, on this problem here, I can multiply 9 times 2 and 9 times 6 and then add them together. Or 8 times 7 and 8 times 1 and then subtract them. So take a look at our teacher examples using the distributive property. I'm going to distribute the negative 4. And distribute is like distributing papers. You would pass one out to everyone. So that means everyone gets a little love from the negative 4. So we have negative 4 times A and negative 4 times 13. I can't combine anything with the negative 4 times a, but I can combine the negative 4 times 13, and I end up here. That's all I can do at this point because I don't know what the a is, so I can't combine these two. Problem B, notice I have 3 numbers that the 5 needs to be distributed to. So I multiply the 5 by all 3 of them. Then I multiply 15, 55, and negative 35. Then I skip change, so I'm working all with addition, and because I never want to work with subtraction when I'm working with negatives. Now I can add my 2 negatives together, and then I add my negative and positive, which means I'm secretly subtracting. Okay. Student practice here. Go ahead and try distributing and then solving. And we will pause your video and start it back up when you're ready to see. Here I have negative 3 is being distributed to both the 8 and the 16. I multiply each of those by negative 3, which gives me 2 negative numbers. So right away I know my answer must be negative. And I add them together. Here I'm distributing the negative 5, distributing the negative 5 to the negative 2, and the negative 5 to the 19. Then I need to multiply. And notice the negatives canceled out here because there were 2 negatives, but not here. So you want to be careful. And now I see subtraction with negatives. I know I need to skip change. I go ahead and do so, and now I have an addition problem. So I'm going to simply add those 2 together. Here with the 2, again I need to distribute the 2. So I have 2 times x and 2 times 7. I can't do anything more with the 2 and the x, but I can multiply the 2 and the 7. And I end up with 2x minus 14. And I'm stuck there since I don't know what the x is. Same type of problem here. I've got negative 6 times t and negative 6 times 15. Then I'm going to multiply. And there's nothing more I can do here. However, I do recommend changing, so you don't have so many signs in here, I recommend changing it to subtraction. Either of these answers would work. So you can leave it as negative 6t plus negative 90 or negative 6t minus 90. Okay, let's take a look at the quiz. You've got 1 question for each property. Notice all of these it says do not solve. That means simply use the commutative property. Think about what the commutative property means and do that here. Associative property here and distributive property here. Notice it says multiply, so you're going to do the multiplication, but you're not going to add. So go ahead and take the quiz on Schoology. Have a great day.